they sold my car. Not just any car. A deep blue Mustang that I had poured my entire teenage life into, piece by piece, paycheck by paycheck, until I finally held the keys in my hand. It wasn't new, but it was mine, and every dent, every polished, chrome detail carried my sweat and stubborn pride. I had worked nights waitressing, scrubbing tables until my arms ached, walking home in the dark because I refused to spend bus money, babysitting neighborhood kids for $5 an hour, mowing lawns, tutoring, doing anything that gave me an extra bill to fold into that crumpled envelope I kept hidden under my bed. 2 summers gone, 2 winters of saying no to clothes, to concerts, to every little luxury, because I had one dream. And then, in a single afternoon, my parents erased it. I came home and the driveway was empty, a gaping silence where my Mustang used to shine. My mom barely looked at me when she said, "We had no choice. Your sister needed help with tuition." But her eyes flickered, and I knew it wasn't tuition. My sister had always been the princess, the one who cried and the world bent to catch her tears. She had designer handbags before she had a stable job, vacations while I was counting tips, excuses while I was making sacrifices. I stood there, fists trembling, and felt something shift in me. They expected me to swallow it, like I always did, to smile through the pain and repeat their favorite line, "Family sacrifices for family." But this time the sacrifice was my blood, my years, my future, and I wasn't going to let it slide. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just nodded, went upstairs and pulled out that old envelope with every handwritten log, every bank statement, every transfer that built that car. I had tracked every single cent, and I promised myself in that moment. She was going to pay me back, not in vague apologies or excuses, but dollar for dollar, until every cent was back in my hands. They thought they had buried my dream, but what they had really done was hand me the weapon I needed. My sister, of course, didn't see it that way. She came waltzing into the house that night, keys to my car dangling from her perfectly manicured fingers like it was some new toy she had earned. "It's just until I get through this semester," she chirped, as if I should be honored to watch her speed off in something I had bled for. I watched from the kitchen doorway, my jaw tight, the scent of her perfume filling the air as she tossed her purse on the counter like a queen returning to her castle. My parents hovered around her, asking if she was okay, if she needed gas money, if the car was running smoothly, never once looking at me, never once acknowledging what they had stolen. And in that silence, I realized it wasn't just about the car. It was about every time they had chosen her over me, every time my needs were brushed aside because she had a meltdown, every holiday I worked double shifts so she could unwrap gifts I couldn't afford. That night, I sat on my bed, staring at the ceiling, and I stopped being the quiet, obedient daughter. I started writing. Page after page, every loan I had taken, every paycheck I had deposited, every expense I had sacrificed. I wasn't just keeping records anymore. I was building a case, and one day, whether she realized it or not, I would place that case in front of her and demand every cent back. The next few weeks were like living in a theater where I was the invisible stagehand, and my sister was the star. Every morning, I'd hear the roar of my Mustang's engine as she pulled out of the driveway, music blasting, her laughter echoing as she sped away with her friends crammed into the back seat. She didn't treat it like a car that represented someone's years of sacrifice. She treated it like a shiny accessory, something to flaunt. Once, I watched her through the curtains as she leaned against the hood at a gas station, snapping photos for her social media, captions dripping with lies about how her hard work finally paid off. Thousands of likes, dozens of comments, praising her hustle, and not a single mention of the fact that she had stolen the dream out from under her own sister. My parents saw those posts too, but instead of shame, their faces swelled with pride. "Look how well she's doing. my dad said one evening, scrolling through her feed while my mother nodded like she was admiring art. I was sitting across from them, homework spread across the table, my throat burning as I bit back the truth. It was easier for them to believe in her fantasy than to face their betrayal of me. But while they were blinded, I was wide awake. I noticed every mile she racked up on my car, every scratch that appeared on the once pristine paint. I caught the smell of smoke in the upholstery the day she let her friends pile in with cigarettes. I listened to her brag about how easy life was when people took care of you, and I realized she thought she had won. She thought I was too quiet, too passive to fight back. What she didn't know was that I had already started collecting evidence far beyond my old envelope of receipts. I pulled my bank statements, dug up old text messages where I had told friends I couldn't go out because I was saving for the car, even scrolled back to dated photos of me working double shifts in that diner uniform. Each piece was proof of the years I had given up to buy what she had snatched without blinking. And as I sat there late at night, my room lit only by the glow of my laptop screen, I felt a cold clarity I had never known before. This wasn't just about repayment. This was about balance. For once in our lives, she was going to face the cost of her choices, not me. It all came crashing down the night she stumbled home drunk, tossing the keys onto the counter with a careless clang. I picked them up, my hands trembling as I saw the fresh gash across the passenger door. My car was scarred because she had decided it would be fun to race her friends down the highway. I asked her what happened, my voice steady but low, and she laughed. She actually laughed. "Relax, it's just a car. You're so dramatic." My parents, who were watching TV in the living room, didn't even flinch. My mom muttered, "Accidents happen," without looking away from the screen. My dad didn't say a word. That was the moment I knew there was no rescue coming. No apology, no parental justice. I was on my own. And oddly enough, that realization gave me power. From then on, I started keeping a running log. Every dent, every tank of gas they paid for her, every repair bill, every insurance premium. I noted it all with the precision of an accountant, because if they weren't going to value what I had built, I was going to show them the true cost of their favoritism in black and white. While they thought I was sulking, I was preparing. I stopped begging for fairness. I stopped trying to make them see me. Instead, I planned how I would one day sit my sister down, hand her the folder that held years of my sacrifices, and make her face the debt she owed. And whether she wrote me a check, sold her things, or worked overtime until her nails broke, she was going to pay every cent back, because that was the only way she would ever understand what she had taken from me. By the time winter rolled around, the resentment in that house had become thick enough to choke on. I was quieter, sharper, moving through rooms like a shadow while my sister paraded herself as the golden child. She'd come home tossing shopping bags onto the couch, designer clothes, shoes that cost more than my monthly paychecks, and when I'd glance at the receipts sticking out of the bags, I knew she wasn't paying for any of it herself. My parents would smile, pretending it was all under control, but I caught the tension in their voices when bills arrived, the way they whispered at night about how to manage until next month. And still, they let her live like royalty while I patched my sneakers with duct tape and made coffee stretch for days. I poured my anger into my evidence. The folder grew heavier every week. Gas receipts I found crumpled in the car, screenshots of her Instagram posts flaunting her ride, even overheard conversations where she admitted she had no idea how she'd get through school without mom and dad footing the bill. I was building not just a record, but a mirror, one she wouldn't be able to look away from when I finally placed it in her hands. I imagined the day constantly, her face paling as she realized I hadn't forgotten, that I had tracked everything, that her free ride was over. And while she strutted, oblivious, I started stacking money again. Smaller, amounts slower this time but steady. Babysitting, tutoring, anything I could do without her noticing. Because one day when I made her pay me back, I wasn't just going to take the money. I was going to buy something bigger, better, and shinier than that first car, and she would have to watch me drive away in it knowing she had funded every last cent. Spring came, and with it my sister's arrogance reached a fever pitch. She started talking about transferring to a private university, one that cost double what our state school did, and my parents actually entertained the idea. I sat at the table during one of their family discussions, silent, listening as my mother said, "We'll figure it out, don't worry." My dad nodded, already calculating how to pull from savings, how to shuffle debts, anything to keep her dream intact. My dream had been stripped from me without a second thought, yet here they were, bending over backwards to make hers happen. That night, when everyone was asleep, I crept into the garage and ran my hand across the hood of the Mustang. It was scratched, dull, smelling faintly of spilled beer. I remembered the day I first bought it, the way my heart nearly burst when I turned the key, the sense of freedom I felt behind the wheel, and I swore I'd never let them erase that memory, no matter how much they tried to bury it under her recklessness. I sat in the driver's seat, pulled my folder onto my lap, and flipped through every page, every piece of evidence. And that's when I realized something. I didn't need to wait for her to grow up or suddenly decide to do the right thing. I was going to decide for her. I started drafting a repayment plan, line by line, adding interest for the years of sacrifice, adding penalties for every dent, every lie. By the time I was done, it wasn't just a few $1,000s, it was a small fortune. And I wasn't going to hand it to her as a polite request. I was going to drop it on her like a bomb, in front of everyone, at the one moment she couldn't wriggle away. Because if she had stolen my dream without blinking, I was going to take her pride in the exact same way. The opportunity came faster than I expected. My sister's birthday rolled around, and of course my parents threw her a massive party, renting out a banquet hall, stringing up fairy lights, even hiring a DJ. I helped set up the decorations, silent and efficient, watching as she floated around in a brand new dress my mother had bought her, gushing about how blessed she was. Dozens of guests arrived, family, friends, even some of her professors, everyone there to shower her with praise. Halfway through the night, when the cake was cut and the speeches began, my father raised his glass to toast her hard work and dedication. I felt the anger rise in my chest, but instead of exploding, I reached into my bag and pulled out the thick folder I'd been preparing for months. My hands didn't shake as I walked up to the microphone, interrupting their chorus of compliments. "If we're celebrating her success," I said calmly, "we should also celebrate how she funded it." I opened the folder and flipped it, around for everyone to see. Photocopies of receipts, screenshots, repair bills, every piece of evidence stacked together in neat order. Murmurs rippled through the crowd, and my sister's smile faltered. She tried to laugh it off, but the words caught in her throat as I began reading out the numbers. The cost of the car, the insurance I'd paid, the repairs she ignored, the interest added for years of my sacrifices. My mother rushed forward, hissing at me to sit down, but I stood taller, my voice steady. "You sold my dream to cover her whims," I said, looking straight at my parents. "Now she will repay every cent. No more excuses, no more handouts." For the first time, my sister's perfect mask cracked. She stammered, insisting it wasn't fair, that I was embarrassing her. But the room had already shifted. Eyes turned on her, judgment heavy, and she couldn't hide. I had waited years for that moment, and I wasn't going to let her slip away from it. The silence after my words felt heavier than the music that had stopped mid-beat. My sister's face flushed red as she tried to wave her hands, muttering something about me being jealous, but I kept going. I laid the pages one by one across the table in front of her like a deck of cards. Purchase agreement, insurance slips, photographs of the car when I first bought it compared to now, gas receipts she left behind in the glove box. Each sheet was another nail in the coffin of her excuses. Guests leaned forward, whispering to each other, and I saw a few shake their heads in disgust. My parents were frozen. Their pride turned into shame in real time. My mom whispered, "This isn't the place," but I cut her off. "It's the perfect place, because you've let her take and take while I've been told to shut up and sacrifice. Tonight, everyone will finally see what that costs." My sister slammed her hands on the table, trying to laugh it off as if it was all a joke, but her voice cracked. I slid the final page toward her. The repayment schedule I had drafted. Neat columns showing not only the money she owed, but the interest. "This is what you'll pay me back," I said flatly. "Every cent, or I'll take it further." For the first time, I saw real fear in her eyes. She glanced around the room, hoping someone would come to her defense, but all she saw were raised eyebrows, crossed arms, people who suddenly realized the golden child wasn't golden at all. My parents' faces had gone pale. My father tried to stand, to smooth it over, but I shook my head. No more smoothing, no more silence. Tonight, the debt is exposed, and it will be repaid. And when I said that, I felt the years of being invisible finally peel away. For once, I wasn't the quiet daughter in the corner. I was the one holding all the power. My sister tried to storm out, but I blocked her path, holding the folder firmly against my chest. "You don't get to run from this," I said, my voice low enough for only her to hear, but sharp enough to cut. She froze, realizing that if she left, the whispers would follow her out the door, staining her reputation more than staying ever. Could. She turned back, cheeks burning, and hissed, "You can't make me pay." I leaned in, my words deliberate. "Watch me." Then I stepped aside, letting her feel the full weight of the stairs pressing down on her. She slumped back into her chair, gripping her champagne glass like it could shield her. My parents finally moved, but instead of defending her, they looked at me, really looked at me for the first time in years. My dad's jaw was tight, his eyes darting between the pages spread out on the table. My mom whispered something about family should stay united, but her voice was hollow, stripped of conviction. The DJ, unsure of what to do, tried restarting the music, but the mood in the room had already shifted beyond repair. People avoided my sister's gaze, suddenly remembering how many times she had bragged about her hustle, how often she flaunted things she never earned. I gathered the papers, tucked them back into the folder, and placed it in her lap. "This isn't going away," I told her. "Every cent comes back to me. If you refuse, I'll escalate. To the family, to the law, to anyone who needs to see." Her mouth opened, but no words came out. For once, the princess had no script, no applause, no shield. And in that silence, I felt a calm power settle in me, stronger than anger, sharper than revenge. I had forced the truth into the light, and she had nowhere left to hide. The days after the party were like living in the aftermath of a storm. My sister sulked in her room, avoiding everyone, while my parents moved around the house in awkward silence, their usual chatter about her accomplishments replaced with clipped, uneasy words. Guests from the party had begun whispering, cousins texting me privately, aunts calling to say they never realized how bad it had gotten. For once, people weren't pitying me behind closed doors. They were siding with me openly. My sister hated it. I caught her on the phone more than once, her voice breaking as she tried to spin the story, painting me as bitter, unhinged, jealous. But the evidence I had displayed was undeniable, and no one bought her version anymore. One evening, she barged into my room, her face twisted with rage. She threw the folder onto my bed, the pages spilling out like an accusation. "Fine," she spat. "You want your money? I'll pay. But don't think this makes you better than me." I looked up from my desk, calm, almost amused. "It's not about being better. It's about finally making you face the cost of everything you've stolen." She stood there trembling, but for once, she had no clever comeback. Over the next weeks, the payments started. Slow at first. Grudging transfers that she tried to disguise as help or loans, but I tracked everyone. And every time she sent me money, I marked it down, line by line, until the balance began to shrink. Watching her hand over what she owed wasn't just satisfying, it was transformative. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the one sacrificing. She was. And each payment wasn't just money. It was proof that the balance of power in our family had shifted forever. By summer, the shift was undeniable. My sister was no longer the golden child. She was the girl who got exposed, the one everyone now whispered about at family gatherings. She tried to regain her throne, arriving in flashy outfits, tossing around exaggerated stories about internships and connections, but people only smiled politely and turned back to me. For once, the spotlight didn't automatically belong to her. And while she scrambled to protect her image, I was quietly building mine. I worked double shifts again, not out of desperation this time, but to stack every dollar she sent me into a separate account, an account that grew fatter each week as her repayments landed. Watching that number climb gave me a thrill no compliment ever could. My parents, meanwhile, avoided the subject entirely, but I caught the shame in their eyes whenever I walked into the room. They had enabled her for years, and now they couldn't deny what they had done to me. My dad even muttered, "Once, you were right," though he couldn't look me in the face when he said it. My mom fussed over me awkwardly, trying to offer small gestures, but it was too late for that. The damage was done, and I wasn't interested in their guilt. What mattered was the slow, steady justice unfolding right in front of me. One evening, when I sat in the driveway watching my sister climb out of the Mustang with her head down, she finally said it, softly, bitterly, "I hate that I owe you." I looked at her, unflinching. "Good," I said. "That's the point. Maybe now you'll understand what it feels like to pay for something instead of taking it." And as I turned away, locking the folder back in my desk, I realized something deeper. Revenge wasn't just making her pay me back. It was watching her live with the weight of knowing she'd never get away with it again. The final blow came the day she tried to skip a payment. She sent me a smug text. "I'm tight this month, you'll get it later." I didn't even reply. Instead, I forwarded the repayment plan, the same one I'd shown at her birthday, and added a single line. "Failure to pay means I take this to small claims court. And yes, I've already spoken to a lawyer." Within an hour, the money landed in my account. That was when it hit her. I wasn't bluffing, I wasn't afraid, and I wasn't going to back down the way I had all our lives. From then on, the payments came on time, every time. Sometimes she sent them with no message, sometimes with a sarcastic emoji, sometimes with a pathetic apology typed out at 2 a.m. None of it mattered. What mattered was that every dollar she sent chipped away at the imbalance that had defined our family for years. My parents finally stopped pretending she was untouchable. I overheard my father snapping at her once, telling her she needed to grow up and stop bleeding everyone dry. My mother stopped covering for her when she came home late, stopped handing her money for emergencies. The pedestal she had lived on was crumbling, piece by piece, and she knew it. Meanwhile, I had started looking at new cars, running my hand along the polished paint of models I could now afford, not just with my own savings, but with the very money she was being forced to give back. It felt poetic. Her recklessness funding my next dream. And when I finally signed the papers on a sleek black car, newer and more powerful than the Mustang ever was, I drove it home deliberately, parking it right next to the beat-up husk she'd destroyed. The look on her face when she saw me step out was worth every year of waiting. She stood on the porch that afternoon, clutching her phone like it could shield her, staring at my new car with wide eyes. The once shiny Mustang sat beside it, dull and tired, the perfect symbol of everything she had taken and ruined. I didn't say a word as I locked the door and walked past her, keys jingling in my hand. She finally broke the silence with a bitter laugh. "So what? You think this makes you the winner now?" I stopped, turned, and looked her dead in the eye. "No," I said calmly. "This makes me free. You're the one still paying." Her smirk faltered, and for a split second I saw it. The realization that she would never escape the shadow of what she owed me, that the dynamic of our entire lives had shifted forever. My parents came out onto the porch a moment later, my mother trying to smooth things over with a forced smile. But even she couldn't deny the truth anymore. Their eyes followed the gleaming black car in the driveway, and I could see it written on their faces. Regret. Regret for selling my dream out from under me. Regret for enabling her at my expense. Regret for underestimating me. I didn't need an apology. I didn't need them to say the words. The silence was enough, because for the first time in my life, I had made them see. I slid into the driver's seat of my new car, the leather still stiff, the scent intoxicating, and I turned the key with a smile. My sister watched from the porch, her arms folded, her jaw clenched. She would keep paying, keep remembering, keep being reminded every month when the transfer left her account that actions have consequences. And me? I finally had what I had always wanted. Not just a car, but the proof that no one, not even family, could erase the value of my hard work again. That summer became the quiet unraveling of everything my sister thought she was. Friends stopped asking her for rides once they realized she couldn't flaunt the Mustang without looking hypocritical. She tried to post less on social media, afraid someone would comment about the party or the repayment plan. For once, her life wasn't enviable, it was pitied, and she hated that more than anything. She avoided me around the house, slipping out early, slamming doors late at night, but it didn't matter. Every month, like clockwork, the money arrived in my account, and every time it did, I marked it down in my ledger with the same satisfaction as turning a key in a lock. My parents grew more distant from her, too. The pedestal they had built for her had cracked beyond repair. My dad started spending more time with me, asking about my job, checking on the new car, even offering to help with maintenance. My mom lingered in the kitchen with me, trying to bridge the years of silence with small talk, like she finally realized I wasn't invisible anymore. And while they were awkward, while they still carried their guilt, I didn't rush to comfort them. They needed to sit in it, to feel what it was like to regret. The balance had shifted, and I wasn't about to hand it back. By the end of the summer, I'd saved enough not only for my car, but for my next step, moving out. The day I told them, my mom's eyes filled with tears, but not the proud kind. They were the tears of someone realizing the child she had overlooked was leaving, taking her independence, her strength, and her silence with her. My sister overheard and muttered, "Good, maybe you'll stop haunting me." I smiled as I packed my things. "Don't worry," I said. "I'll haunt you every time that payment leaves your account." And the way her face twisted told me she knew it was true. The day I left was nothing dramatic. No screaming, no begging me to stay. I loaded my boxes into the back of my new car while my parents hovered awkwardly on the porch, guilt written in every line of their faces. My sister didn't even come out to say goodbye. She sat in her room with the door slammed shut, sulking like a child denied candy. When I slammed the trunk shut, I felt something lift off me, years of being the overlooked one peeling away like dead skin. My father mumbled something about visiting soon. My mother tried to press leftovers into my hands, but I just smiled and said, "I'll be fine." And for the first time in my life, I truly meant it. The drive to my new apartment was surreal, windows down, music blasting, the sun warming my face. This time, the car wasn't just a symbol of freedom, it was the proof of survival. proof that I could claw back what was stolen from me and build something even stronger from the ruins. I moved into a small but bright apartment, walls bare, but full of potential, and I felt more peace in that empty space than I ever had in my parents' crowded house. My sister tried calling the next week, not to apologize, but to whine about how hard it was making those monthly payments. I let the call ring out. She needed to sit with it, to feel the weight of accountability pressing on her chest. Because my silence wasn't weakness anymore. It was power. Every transfer she sent was a reminder that the roles had reversed, that the girl she once mocked for being too quiet was the one who had broken her facade. And as I sat by the window of my new home that night, city lights twinkling outside, I realized my revenge was complete. It wasn't loud or violent. It was steady, unshakable, and lasting. She would never forget, because I had forced her to repay not just the money, but the years she had stolen. Weeks turned into months, and with every payment she sent me, I could feel her resentment deepening. She wasn't used to being accountable, to having her actions tied to consequences that wouldn't just vanish with a tantrum, and I didn't shield her from it. I let her stew in the silence. Sometimes she would attach petty notes to the transfers, things like, "Hope you're enjoying my hard-earned money," or, "Maybe now you'll shut up about it." I never replied. My silence was louder than any argument because she knew the truth. That money wasn't hers. It was mine. Every cent she sent was just a piece of what she had stolen. Meanwhile, my life began to expand in ways she could only watch from the sidelines. I decorated my apartment with things I bought myself. Every new lamp or framed picture a quiet victory. I picked up extra shifts when I wanted to, not because I had to, and I began planning trips I'd never been able to afford before. Small escapes, weekends at the beach, hiking trips with friends, paid for not with guilt, but with my own independence. And all the while, I drove past her in my sleek car, catching the flicker of jealousy in her eyes. Once, she snapped at me during a family dinner, accusing me of rubbing it in her face. I calmly set my fork down and said, "I don't have to rub anything in. You remind yourself every month when you hit send." My parents said nothing. They had finally learned not to interfere, to let her carry her own weight. And in that silence, I realized I had done more than reclaim my dream. I had shifted the entire family dynamic. I was no longer the invisible daughter. I was the one who had proven that strength doesn't always roar. Sometimes it just waits, records, and collects, until the debt is undeniable. The turning point came almost a year later, when the final payment was due. My sister had chipped away at the balance month after month, each transfer like a drop of blood squeezed from a stone, and by the time the end was near, she was a shell of the girl who once bragged about never lifting a finger. She showed up at my apartment unannounced, her nails chipped, her clothes not quite as flashy as before, and for the first time in her life, she looked small. She dropped the envelope on my table with a loud slap, the last of what she owed, and sneered, "There. You've bled me dry. Happy now?" I didn't even flinch. I opened the envelope, counted the bills slowly, methodically, and when I confirmed it was the full amount, I set it down between us. "This isn't about happy," I told her quietly. "It's about even." She laughed bitterly, but there was no power in it, only exhaustion. She tried to launch into her usual tirade about how unfair life was, about how our parents had always expected more from her, about how I'd ruined her reputation. I let her talk until her voice cracked, and then I cut in, calm but firm. "No, what ruined your reputation was the truth. What ruined your easy life was your choices. I just made sure you couldn't bury the evidence anymore." She glared at me, her eyes wet, but for once, she didn't argue. She just stood there, swallowing her pride like broken glass, before turning on her heel and leaving without another word. When the door clicked shut behind her, I felt something release in me, something I had carried for years, It wasn't joy exactly. It was relief. She could no longer touch me, no longer take from me, no longer erase me. My parents tried to call that night, my mother with her trembling voice asking if I really had to push her so far. I answered honestly, yes, because you never taught her that actions have consequences. I did. And then I hung up. The silence that followed was the sweetest sound I had ever known. It wasn't just the end of her debt. It was the end of my invisibility, the end of sacrificing myself to feed her endless hunger. I had finally broken the cycle, and in that moment, I knew she would never forget it. In the months that followed, life finally felt like it belonged to me. I wasn't the background character in someone else's drama anymore. I was center stage in my own story. My sister still tried to slither back into her old role, making snide comments at gatherings, tossing her hair like she hadn't been forced to repay every cent. But the difference was clear. No one took her seriously anymore. The family who once praised her blindly now looked at her with quiet disapproval, their faith in her cracked beyond repair. And when they looked at me, it wasn't with pity anymore. It was with respect. I had proven what she never could: resilience, accountability, strength. My parents tried in their own clumsy way to rebuild bridges. My dad offered to help me with investments. My mom tried inviting me over for dinners that felt more like apologies than meals. I accepted their gestures with polite distance, but I never forgot. Forgiveness didn't erase the years of being sacrificed for someone else's comfort. I didn't need them to say sorry. I had already moved beyond their approval. I poured my energy into my own future instead, working toward goals that had nothing to do with them or her. My new car gleamed in the driveway of my apartment complex, not as a trophy, but as a reminder of how far I had come. Every time I slid behind the wheel, I remembered the girl who once stood in an empty driveway with tears in her eyes, watching her dream vanish. That girl was gone. She had grown into someone stronger, sharper, untouchable. And my sister? She carried the weight of knowing that she had been forced to repay every cent, that her free ride was over, that she had been stripped of the illusion that she could take without consequence. That was my real revenge. Not just the money, not just the car, but the permanent shift in our story. I wasn't her shadow anymore. I was the proof that you can't erase someone's worth, no matter how hard you try. And every time she looked at me, she saw the one thing she could never take. Away again, my power.